let's talk about what we need to know about using the tempera cake paints. These are called tempera cakes. They sit in this tray, and you can notice right now that they're dry. So just like using watercolors, we need to use water to activate or get these paints ready to start using. So I'm going to start by wetting my paintbrush and just wiping it off a little bit so it's not soaking wet. The first time I use these paints, because they're dry, I need to kind of warm them up. So to do that, I'm going to pet the kitten with my paintbrush. So that means I'm kind of pretending that my paintbrush is my hand and the paint cake here is a kitten. And I'm petting it very gently, okay, as if it were a baby animal. And I can see that the paint is really starting to loosen up and it looks like it's almost ready to paint. Alright, so once I see that I have lots of paint forming on the top of my cake, I'm going to start painting on my paper. And I want to go back and forth on my paper. Right, I can see that it's nice and wet. I have a really nice blue color. And I'll know when I need to get more paint when either my blue color starts to get light or I'm seeing lots of white space on my paper, because that's telling me I don't have enough paint on my brush. So I can come back and just get a little bit more, right, and start adding to it. Now you can see my blue is much darker here because right now the paint is kind of drying up, so it's mostly paint and it's not a lot of water. So if you want a really nice deep color, you want to have less water and more paint on your brush, right? But you still are going to have to add a little bit more when it starts to dry up too much. And you'll get a feel for this as you continue painting, right? So if I want it to be darker, I can go back in and I'm painting side to side, except if I want to trace along something. So along that black line that I drew, I'm going to drag my paintbrush around the edge of it to make a nice outline. And then I can go back in, fill in those spots, adding a little bit of water when I can feel that my paintbrush is drying out. Okay. You can also see that, yes, my paper is wet, but it's not soaking wet. What you don't want to see forming on your paper is a puddle. Puddle is when you have too much water and it's not soaking into the paper, but it looks something like this. All right, this is going to take a long time to dry, and the paint is going to kind of spread out, and it's not going to dry evenly like the rest. So if that happens, you can always take a paper towel and soak it up, and then dry off your brush a little by wiping it, and just add a little bit more paint to it. All right, you can fix that right up. All right, so now that I've painted with blue, I'm going to change colors and I need to clean my brush off really, really well. Because if your brush is not cleaned up, you're going to end up with dirty paint cakes like this one over here and like this yellow, okay? People at your table are not going to be very happy if you have dirty paint cakes. So to clean off your brush, just kind of swoosh it gently on the bottom of the cup. Don't knock the sides or your paint cup will spill. Wipe it off a little bit. If you see that it still looks dirty, clean it off a little bit more. All right, and that looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to choose a different color. I'll use the red. Okay, warming it up like we did with the blue. Petting the kitten gently back and forth. All right, back and forth. Good. All right, so maybe this time I will start by outlining that shape. Okay, that will make it a lot easier for me to paint inside this area once I have built that wall to help me, because now all I have to go back and forth, filling it in really quickly and easily. Okay. Now if I want to paint inside a small area like that one, I'm going to use a smaller paintbrush. Okay, something like this. And I want to make sure that that paint is pretty dry. It's pretty dry. I left a little bit of a fingerprint, but I think that will be okay. Okay, if my paint is very, very wet, I will wait to paint over here because I don't want my colors to bleed together, which I'll show you in a minute. Right? So with my small paintbrush, I'm going to do the same thing though. I'm going to trace around the lines that I drew first, and then I go in and fill in those shapes. Okay? Now, a little bit more about the bleeding color. All right? If I have some red paint over here, and especially if it's really, really watery, okay? And then I decide, well, I'd like to see some blue paint right next to that. Okay, clean off my brush. If I'm noticing that my brush is really not getting clean, it means I need new water, okay? And Mrs. Owens can help you with that. All right, and then I go to put some blue paint next to it. All right, you can already see what's happening. The red and the blue are blurring together. All right, it's happening right now too. Okay, sometimes you might want that to happen, but most of the time when we paint, we don't want our colors blurring together. That is why you wait until it's almost dry to paint next to wet paint. All right, so those are the main things that you really need to remember when you are painting with the tempera cakes. Have fun!